Today, we're diving into one of Jesus's most fascinating stories, one that's part agricultural lesson and part, well, cosmic drama. It's the parable of the wheat and tares. It's a short tale about a sabotaged field that reveals a really surprising truth about good and evil in our world. So, before we even get into the story itself, you gotta ask the question, why did Jesus teach this way? I mean, after giving these very direct messages, like the Sermon on the Mount, he all of a sudden shifts his style. He starts using these symbolic stories, these parables, that were so confusing, even his own disciples had to pull him aside and ask what was going on. And this was his answer. Now, the key word here is mysteries. In this context, a mystery isn't something that's totally unknowable, but it's a hidden truth that God chooses to reveal. So these parables, they were kind of like a key. For those who are really ready to listen, they unlocked these profound truths about the kingdom of heaven. But for everyone else, they just sounded like simple stories about farming. Okay, so with that in mind, let's get to the story. On the surface, it's a simple little tale about farming. But just underneath, there's a whole story of sabotage and a huge conflict playing out in this quiet little field of grain. The parable kicks off with this really perfect, hopeful image, right? You've got a sower, a field, and good seed. The intention is pure, the action is positive. It's the ideal start for a great harvest. But then, things take a very dark turn. Under the cover of darkness, while everyone is asleep, an enemy creeps in and commits an act of agricultural sabotage. He secretly sows tares, which is a type of weed that looks almost exactly like wheat when it's young, and then he just vanishes. And make no mistake, this wasn't an accident. This was a deliberate act of corruption designed to ruin the entire harvest. And for a while, nobody even notices. The good and the bad are growing side by side, and you can't tell them apart. It's only when the plants start to mature and actually bear fruit that the deception is revealed. The field isn't pure at all. It's a mix of the genuine and the counterfeit. So the servants, they see the problem, and they have an immediate, totally logical reaction. Hey, there are weeds in the field. We need to get them out. Let's go purify the crop and save the harvest. It's a completely understandable impulse, right? See a problem? Fix the problem. But the master's response is completely counterintuitive. He says, no, don't pull the weeds. And why? Because by now, their roots are all tangled up together. Trying to rip out the bad growth would absolutely damage and uproot the good wheat too. And this is the central mystery of the parable, this instruction to tolerate corruption for the sake of protecting the good. So the master gives this command of radical patience. He says, let them coexist. The separation, the judgment, it's not going to happen now. It has to wait for a very specific time in the future. The harvest. And this leaves the story on a huge cliffhanger, and you can bet his disciples needed to know what it all meant.
And they were wondering, for sure. Later, when they were in private, his disciples came to him and asked for an explanation. They basically said, okay, Jesus, you have to tell us what that whole parable of the tares in the field was about. And so he began to decode the symbols, revealing its true prophetic meaning.
And right here, Jesus just lays it all out. This simple story suddenly becomes cosmic. The sower? That's not just any farmer. That's the Son of Man, Jesus himself. The field isn't some random plot of land. It's the entire world. The good seed and the tares, well, they're people, the children of the kingdom and the children of the wicked one. The enemy who snuck in is the devil himself. And the harvest? That's the end of the world, when the reapers, who are the angels, will finally come to separate them. So what was the huge secret Jesus was revealing here? What was this mystery that was so revolutionary? You have to understand, this was a truly shocking idea at the time. A lot of people expected the Messiah's kingdom to be this purely righteous, conquering force that would immediately cleanse everything. But instead, Jesus taught that for this entire age, his kingdom on earth would be a messy mix of good and evil, coexisting right up until the very end. And this is where you see the incredible wisdom in the master's command to just wait. Any premature human-led attempt to purify the field could actually do way more harm than good. In trying to root out the wicked, the righteous themselves might be harmed or even destroyed. So in this age, patience is actually a form of protection for the faithful. But that patience isn't infinite. The parable makes it crystal clear that this period of coexistence has an endpoint. So let's jump ahead to the harvest and see how this whole thing builds to its dramatic conclusion.
So the end of the world is described here as a very organized process. First, the angels are dispatched. And notice the order of operations, because this is crucial. They gather the tares first. These are all bundled up to be burned. It's only after the wicked have been removed that the wheat, the righteous, are gathered safely into the barn.
The fate of the tares is described in really stark, severe terms. This furnace of fire symbolizes their final judgment, a state of profound suffering and regret. The language is intense because it's meant to convey the ultimate seriousness of this final separation. And then, in direct contrast, look at the destiny of the wheat. There's no talk of fire or suffering at all. Instead, you get this image of pure, radiant glory. They will shine forth as the sun. It's this powerful picture that represents their final state of joy and exaltation in the kingdom of their Father. Two very different seeds leading to two very different destinies.
Jesus ends the explanation with that phrase he used so often, a challenge that turns the entire story back on the listener. It's not just a story about some field long ago, it's a timeless principle about deception, about patience, and about ultimate justice. The final question it really leaves us with is, are we truly listening?